Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the Bow Metal Nerd coming at you with another video. And yes, I know I'm a day late on this. Um, I'm here, of course, to talk about Star Trek Picard, the initial episode. As many of you are aware, I am a huge Star Trek fan. Have been my whole life. For those of you who don't know me, just to give a little bit of background, as far as my Star Trek fandom goes, my view is I hate Discovery. I don't like the J.J. Abrams reboot films. I don't care for those, but I like basically the other iterations of Trek. I started with the original series, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, blah blah blah, and we can have arguments all day about the merits of those shows or whatever. But the Next Generation is definitely one of my absolute favorite iterations of Trek. So let's talk a little bit about Star Trek Picard. At least the first episode. It's all I've seen. What I've noticed is there is what I would call a small cottage industry on YouTube, basically either defending the new Star Trek or just shitting all over the new Star Trek, no matter what. For me, I try to judge this on its own merits. Now, keep in mind, with me hating Discovery as much as I do, I went into watching the show with exceptionally low expectations, right? I thought to myself, wow, this is probably going to really suck ass. It didn't. It was surprisingly very solid. And if you care about spoilers, turn this video off because I am going to talk about some plot points that would be considered spoilers. So before I go into detail, yes, I like the episode, and I think it's a decent mixture of different elements, and if you are a Star Trek fan, you owe it to yourself to watch it. That's my basic thoughts, but if you want to hear a little more details and you don't mind spoilers, here goes. The episode starts off, Picard is in, it's a little bit of a cliche. He starts off, in this dark, depressed, bitter old state, and essentially some shit happens that gets him stirred up. Probably the biggest thing that happens is a young woman named Daj comes along and, feels this intense connection to Picard. She basically has superpowers, but it's not just for ridiculous reasons. Well, I mean, I guess it's a little ridiculous because there's a little bit of a MacGuffin in there, but in Star Trek we have to expect a few ridiculous things. So she runs to, basically some people show up in her apartment, they kill her boyfriend, they try to kill her, she ends up killing them, she runs off to find Picard, and she talks to Picard, and basically Picard figures out that she's some form of an android, right, this woman. And apparently she was formed by one single positronic neuron of Data's. So in a way, she's like Data's daughter. Built, from my understanding, Bruce Maddox had some, for A Measure of a Man, had some influence in her construction. But whenever they create these androids, they have to create two. So there's a twin of her out there somewhere. And at first, we don't see where she is. Basically, they run around, discover some things. The young woman, Daj, seems to die. I don't know if she's fully dead or not, but I mean, just looks to be dead. And then, of course, Picard is upset about this. Then he figures out there's a second one out there somewhere. And then at the very end of the episode, Picard's talking about going on a mission. And then we see the Borg cube that we saw in all of the trailers. And then the Romulans are on it. And there's this awesome callback to the original series where you see the Romulan villain walking in the cube and you hear basically the theme to Balance of Terror in it, which is really awesome. And then you see the, quote, twin. She's on the Borg cube as well. She's like a psychiatrist or something. I don't know. So anyway, that's essentially the episode, the details of the storyline. And the storyline's a little bit silly, but that's not really a huge problem. What I was really worried about is how they were going to handle Picard's character. I was really worried that they were going to make him a lot worse. But even though he starts off kind of a cliched, bitter old guy who's disillusioned and all that, by the end of the episode, he's definitely more or less becoming the hero that we all remember him as. He is portraying Jean-Luc Picard, the guy we all know and love from The Next Generation. So it doesn't suck. I can say that. This is the first time that Star Trek has not sucked in nearly 20 years, right? Like, it's been a really long time since Star Trek has been good. I mean, Enterprise was okay, but it definitely was, on the lower side of quality. Now, to be fair, this episode was not as good. Like, if you think of an extremely good TNG episode, this episode was not as good as an extremely good TNG episode. If I had to say where I found it on the quality, I would rate this episode, again, it's only been one episode, I would rate it slightly above a mid-tier next-gen episode, which for Star Trek nowadays is like, yes, I know it's kind of low expectations, but you have to keep in mind what we've been fed recently. The episode was definitely good enough to make me want to see what happens next. Whereas every other recent Star Trek thing, I didn't care what happened next in the story. I wouldn't have cared if they had never produced any more of it. But this, I actually want to see the continuation of the story. So it's a huge improvement over what we've been fed recently. So I'm sure you've probably watched other videos on this already. And there's basically two schools of thought that are, big on this, because people tend to be more extreme in their views one way or the other. You're going to have one camp that says, the quote, fandom menace. They're going to say, oh, this is a total piece of crap. It's a train wreck. It's just as bad as Discovery. Star Trek's ruined. Well, no. I would disagree with that part of the, quote, fan community. And I think a big reason those folks have such a big voice is because, let's face it, it's popular to hate on franchises, right? It's a big thing that a lot of people do. And yes, Picard has its issues. It's not perfect, at least in this one fucking episode. It's definitely not perfect, but it's not a total piece of crap either. And then, of course, you'll hear the other side, which is, oh, this is the best thing ever. It's just as good as TNG. In fact, it's one of the best. No, those folks are incorrect as well. It's definitely very solid and most definitely worth your time at the very least. It is. If you are a Star Trek fan, you definitely owe it to yourself to watch this. Keep in mind, I would not say this about Discovery at all. I would say Discovery is completely skippable. Don't waste your time with it. Same thing about the reboot movies. So, excuse me. I'll leave that in there. Why not? It'll be a little funny. But that's pretty much my opinion. I think it's a fairly good, solid start to the series, and I'm pretty excited about season 1. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with it. At the end of season 1, I'll make another video. I don't plan on making a video after every episode of Picard because, well, this isn't that type of channel. If you did stumble across this channel, feel free to look around. If you like what you see, please subscribe. That's pretty much it. If you did like this, of course, thumb me up. If you don't, whatever. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. Live long and prosper, and keep on rocking.